But I certainly would point out the things that I learned early doors was that I'm not responsible for it. I didn't cause it and I can't cure it.
Hello and welcome to Wellbeing. I'm Jack Hodgins. Today I'll be discussing the experiences of being in a relationship with someone affected by an alcohol use disorder. We are joined by Evie, who has first-hand experience in being in a relationship with people affected by an alcohol use disorder. She is here today to share her perspective and to shed some light into her world. Hello Evie, and welcome to the program.
Hi Jack, thank you very much for having me.
Before we begin, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself, Evie?
I'm a 51-year-old woman living down here in Melbourne from Croatian background and with a family history of alcoholism that I didn't really know about until I got pretty sick.
Would you mind me asking which member of your family had the issues with it?
Sure. It was my grandfather and on my dad's side. And I think it's also on my mum's side as well. And then there's members of the family who are affected by alcoholism, but it's all overseas. It's not here in Australia. So it wasn't in my face. And I didn't know about it. I only knew a little bit about it through, my dad talking about his difficult childhood and the things that he faced, but hadn't really discovered how badly it had affected me until I got sick myself and started to, find a solution to feel better and get myself well.
Okay. And it runs in the family. Did you ever have any kind of issues with alcohol yourself, or was it mostly people around you?
No, not myself. No one in my family has the craving or the phenomenon of craving for alcohol in my direct family, no.
So did it ever affect a relationship with somebody in your family?
It certainly has. It's affected all my relationships that I've had with people. It certainly has affected the family dynamic as well. And, to be honest with you, it was a very difficult family to be, kind of extending love and care and consideration for one another. So I was always attracted to people who were in addiction themselves in my personal relationships. And, that causes problems. That causes problems when one or two of the, that you are in the relationship with are not fully present. So
how does that affect daily life when you're with someone that does struggle a bit with alcohol?
First and foremost, there's a lot of anger that comes up, a lot of frustration. And there's a lot of seeking of a solution, wanting to make it feel like I want to make it feel better. I want to fix the solution. I want to change that person's mind. And I want to convince that person that, why are you doing this? I take it personally as well, almost as that they're doing this deliberately to me. This is what I've discovered through Al-Anon, that, falsely I thought that it was being done to me. And I didn't realise that person had lost the power of choice over what they were doing. And it wasn't a personal reflection. I don't think people choose in their lives to ever, lead a destructive life that, alcohol, drugs, or whatever the addiction may be, gambling, etc. I don't think they go out with the intent to hurt other people. But it's a bit like a blast zone. So once the, grenade goes off, people around it are affected. And so, first and foremost, the anger and resentment and frustration, and trying to stop the situation happening to me because it was affecting me. And I thought the solution was to try and change them. And, it's a lonely experience. It's a very lonely, isolating experience. It has a lot of shame around it as well. Well, it did for me. And it was very hard to reach out and get help. So, I became very self-reliant trying to figure out a solution myself.
Why do you think these people turn to alcohol?
I don't know. There'd probably be some sort of scientific reason for it. They seem to have, and, it's probably best speaking to, a recovered alcoholic on this, but from my understanding of the disease, that they have an allergic reaction to alcohol, a bit like, say, if you or I had an allergic reaction and, we would probably treat it by, say, if you had an allergic reaction to peanut butter, or you wouldn't eat peanuts then, or peanut butter. But with them, it's such a socially accepted thing that you can take alcohol. People turn to it in the community as a way to relieve themselves. But the problem is they don't have a stop button, is what I understand of it. They've lost the power of choice to say, no, I better pull up now. Whereas I had that power of choice because I'm not affected by that allergic reaction. And I thought that was just a willpower thing. They could stop it. But I've since found out they can't. they need something greater than themselves to help them with that. So why they turn to it, maybe it's the same reason why I turn to the things that, I turn to make myself feel better. There's an uncomfortable feeling, there's fears and doubts and anger and resentments in my life that, maybe I want to numb those things out. So, there's something in my thinking that will, be a little bit warped or twisted, a little bit peculiar, and I want to turn that to something just to numb it out and get rid of the, I'm a comfort seeker. I want to feel better. I don't want to feel like rubbish, So, there's probably a lot mixed up within that. But I think it's not something that I did that made them do it as such, although that's sometimes what I used to think, that I was responsible for it. It's nothing that I or you or whoever it is that's living in that glass zone of someone in addiction that has caused that.
Did you find that the addiction to alcohol, was it a gradual thing in the relationships? Did the people that you were with gradually get worse, or what was your experience?
With the relationships that I've been in with alcoholics, if I look back, one was probably gradual, another one was full on into it. And I just accepted that. Almost it was a bit of a blind spot, thinking that it's just a normal part of him and his, who he is, and part of the fun and frivolity of, a new relationship. It was always present in there, but for some reason I didn't quite see it. Or don't realise that that's the issue. I just know that person is turning to that, and it's almost like having a third partner in a relationship. It's like that there's so much dependency on that really is with, you having an honest, true, very present relationship with someone. So, and it creates a terrible personality change as well, which is no fun. And it's fun when everyone's, they're the life of the party and great personality, but then there's a very dark side of it too. So, I think, and from my knowledge as well, understanding more about the disease, learning about it, that some people come to it gradually. Some people just have bam, full on, and they, just drink to excess and they cannot pull up at all. And, it's very obvious. Other people, it can be a gradual thing as well.
Do you recall the first moment when you kind of said to yourself, this probably isn't normal, kind of what's going on? Like, this isn't like, not everyone's kind of doing, like, not everyone's dependent on alcohol as much as this person that I'm with is.
Oh yeah, there's times that there's like a little small inner voice that would, kind of tap me on the shoulder and say, this isn't right. This isn't right. But I think that's part of the delusion of all the illness and being caught up in the family disease of alcoholism, that you talk yourself out of it, or you don't listen to it, you don't act upon it. You think, no, it's going to be okay. I'll try I'll try something else, and maybe this will work. And it's not until, your life is really up the creek and you're so sick yourself that you finally go, I've had enough. And for some people, they come to that realisation early, I've found, who I've worked with that need help with, the family disease of alcoholism. They come to that realisation early and they go, that's it, I'm sick of it. That's something not right, and I need to do something about it. Other people take a lot longer, and they, have to get to a really low point of destruction in their own life, which, I got to that myself until I was prepared to go, like, I really do need help with this. I'm not going to battle away on my own, because it's a terrible secret as well that you keep. It's like a secret that you keep deep down inside you. You find it hard to speak to anyone about it because there's not a lot of people talking about it in the community, certainly not between the alcoholics themselves, but the family members affected by it. So you might put up a front and everything might be seemingly okay, but then behind closed doors, it's like, the Amityville horror. It's just, terrible destruction in the family home and pulling people, one another apart. And it's a very unloving relationship with a lot of conflict and, well, in my situation, a lot of conflict, starting to turn to domestic violence as well. And that's not just, I'm talking about what I started to turn into. So it's not just the alcoholic who's affected. I started to get really out of control. And I think that's when that voice gets louder and louder. It's like, I cannot live this way anymore. And you start seeking help. But, I'm still looking at the alcoholic and blaming the alcoholic. I'm not looking at myself and what I'm contributing. So that's the twist in all this for me, that it's difficult for me to look at what I was doing and like, well, okay, you can keep concentrating on them, but you have to run your life. You have to be responsible for your own life. What are you going to do about it? And that's the really hard part about it. Yeah, they're wake up moments. But yeah, I think everyone comes to it at a different time.
You're listening to Wellbeing, where we're discussing relationships with alcohol use disorder in the mix. My guest today is Evie, who has experienced relationships with alcoholics. When did you first go to Al-Anon?
Oh, I got introduced to Al-Anon by some very dear people. My a partner when I was in my early 20s, they had been admitted to a treatment centre in hospital, and there were some very dear people that came along and told me about Al-Anon, and they suggested that I go. And that was in my early 20s that I found out about Al-Anon as a support group. I didn't really understand why or what. I did it only because I was really told to do that. And I remember going into that meeting. Well, I don't remember much about the meeting apart from that I walked out pretty quick. I don't think I even stayed. So, fast forward 20 years later when I'm, in a mental health hospital myself, and it's reintroduced to me by the therapist, and they pop you into those meetings as well as part of your treatment plan. And it wasn't until then that, and reinforcement through the therapeutic practice there, that I was reintroduced to it. And it was emphasised that, once you leave hospital, you're going to need some support, and you can't do this alone. And luckily I heard something in that time, 20 years later, and probably was ready not to go back and live the way that I had been living before, and was ready for change. And started going regularly to Al-Anon meetings from then. So that's probably about 6 years ago now. First and foremost, the behaviour, it starts to reduce, if not eliminates it altogether. So it took the real sting out of the anger and the frustration that I didn't even have the power anymore to fight. And with that, there is no fight. You don't have a conflict with someone unless you've got two people who are willing to have a fight. But when you're not willing to have a fight anymore, it started to reduce that instantly. So as I changed, the dynamic at home changed. So you could have conversations rather than screaming matches. And I wasn't throwing things around anymore. I just took the absolute sting out of that charged up anger that I used to have, was diffused. Nothing, Jack. That was, striking. The other thing was it started to really reveal my fears. And once I started using the program and understanding more about it, what was really driving my crazy thinking was that those fears became reduced, and the anxiety that I felt all the time, it was like a kind of, when you put the choke on in the car and it's running really high, the revs are running really high. I just felt like I was running really high all the time, but I didn't know that because I just got used to that feeling gradually over a period of time. As I started to do the Al-Anon program and involve myself more in it and take on that program of action, that now starts to make me run like I'm just idling. I haven't got that V8 sensation. I'm not meant to run at that level of anxiety. And I started to feel calmer and not frightened. The isolation changed. I didn't feel like people were looking at me anymore and talking about me anymore and all that sort of paranoid, neurotic things. So my crazy thinking started to change, and I started to have clarity with my thinking and no longer trying to change situations that I couldn't change, and get involved in these stoushes that just weren't mine. So I start to lead a calmer life, and still do. The closer I stay to the program, I'm calmer. When I move away from it, I get back into my old, neurotic, crazy thinking. So yeah, they were probably the biggest things, that the anger reduced, the fears reduced, and I become more me, more honest with me.
It seems to me that there's a lot of supports for those that do have the problems with alcohol, but are there enough supports overall for the family members?
I think it gets identified like it did with me in terms of mental health, because that's, one of the symptoms, I guess, that was really obvious of being affected. So I think there's a lot of assistance for mental health, whether it extends into finding out that the root cause is the family disease of alcoholism. That's very much a contributor to all this. I would say no. Like, I was very fortunate of where I ended up, that it was a mental health hospital that did identify that. And I think that's fairly rare from all the years of therapeutic practice that I've gone through. It was never really touched on. So I'm very grateful that Al-Anon does exist. It's the solution that's worked for me, and I've stuck with it since I've discovered it. But I don't honestly know if there's anything else in the community to help family members. I think it's hard for the family members to identify that they need help themselves, because they're focused on wanting to help their loved ones. They can see their loved ones affected by the illness and the disease, and they want to help them, and they put their focus on them, and their lives disintegrate as a result of that. It's hard to even identify yourself that you need help, and where do you go to get that help? So there's not a lot of, because there's many, many different things and forms of help, self-help these days. So to find the one that's right for you and that addresses that particular family issue, it's harder. There's, it's not an organisation that's funded by private enterprise, so there's not a lot of advertising around it. So how do you find these things? They're harder and harder to find, I think.
And it seems also too that, did you find that there was a lot of stigma, or did you feel as there was a lot of stigma towards those that are the family members of alcoholics? Because there's a lot of stigma towards those that are alcoholics, but is there also stigma towards those that are family members?
Yeah, I think I concocted that up in my head that, I just couldn't be ill. I had to be perfect. And I couldn't have mental illness either. I couldn't be affected by something that it's seemingly to me that, you could have control over. So I think I built that barrier up. That kept me away from even trying to find help in general. Absolutely. I felt a lot of shame. So, yeah, there was a stigma that I believed and created. And a lot of people don't know how to handle it either. Like, it's a very hard thing to sort of bring up, isn't it? It's almost like a black mark against your name kind of thing. And if you do mention it, most people won't know how to kind of deal with it either. So they might move away from you in the room if you start talking about it. But, for me, I just couldn't speak to anyone about it. And that's the beauty of going to Al-Anon, that as soon as you walk in, it is okay to talk about this stuff. There's other people talking about it. They're talking about the deep, dark secrets that no one wants to talk about. And you certainly don't want to ever reveal of how it is at home when the doors are closed, no one's looking. But they're talking about it, and instantly you go, oh, my God, this is okay. This normalises it, that we're okay, that we're admitting that we're struggling and that we have not been able to cope well with it, and our lives have become really unmanageable as a result of it, and I'm not travelling too good. So instantly allows you to be honest, I found, when I was in the rooms. And for some, that takes a long time to thaw out and get used to it. Some people come to it quickly and just go, oh, this is a relief, I need this, and acknowledge it straight away. Other people take a long time to thaw out, and that's okay. Everyone comes to it in their own way, shape or form, and people can come back. People leave the program, people come back to the program. It's open doors, it's non-judgmental, and I think that's what's so good about it. There's no stigma. Because it's out there. We all know what we're there for, and it's okay to talk about it, and there's a solution here. It's not just a matter of talking about it, moaning about it, blah, 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 blah. You get to, feel these feelings and let a lot of grief and suppression of those feelings that you've been holding for such a long time, trying to battle away on your own. You can let it go there, and nobody's going to judge you. What they'll do is they'll walk along beside you and they'll say, hey, this is what's helped me. And there's no right or wrong. There's no one telling you what to do. It's entirely up to you how you want to tackle it, how fast you go through it, and who you want to work with. If you want to work with, some people want to work one-on-one with someone. Some people don't. They just want to go in and sit in the rooms and feel safe. And that's the beauty of those places. And they've also got fantastic experience there, particularly when it comes to domestic violence, of how do you look after yourself. And people's lives have been transformed, when they're just in that dire, hopeless and helpless state, they find help there. And they transform their lives into a life that they never, ever thought was possible for them to live still loving their family member, not rejecting their family member. And that's regardless of whether they still drink or not. So that is revolutionary, because, you know, when I came into Al-Anon, I thought I was going to kill him, you know, and
Yeah.
like him, everyone else around him as well, and, you know, all his friends and blah, 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 blah. You know, I don't feel that way. It's produced a loving tolerance in a way that I just never, ever thought would occur. And it produces a lot of freedom.
You're listening to Wellbeing, where we're discussing relationships with alcohol use disorder in the mix. My guest today is Evie, who has experienced relationships with alcoholics. So in a lot of ways, you can still manage a relationship even though there's like alcohol in the mix kind of thing.
Yeah, some members choose to do that, some members choose not to. So it's you know, purely up to you, and that's the beauty of the program. You're empowered to make your own choices and what's right for you and what you value. So you know, Al-Anon is full of people who have you know, their mums and dads whose daughters and sons are affected, or they might be, you know, daughters and sons whose parents are affected. So, you know, they still continue to have a relationship and, you know, a worthy relationship with those people as a result of it. Some of them are, you know, husbands and wives of alcoholics, or, you know, just whatever their relationship is. Some people still choose to be with the alcoholic, and some people don't. And it's, you know, it's all about finding what's right for you and getting honest with, you know, with yourself and also with the alcoholic too. So, yeah, it doesn't mean the end of the road because you're with an alcoholic, or, you know, you're going to be banished from society, or that person doesn't deserve, you know, being loved and cared for any less just because they're afflicted with an illness. You know, it's like if you have someone with cancer or something that's more obvious, or some sort of other allergic reaction or mental health illness, that, you know, you do learn coping skills. And some people choose to stay, some people choose to go. Yeah.
Did you learn anything like about yourself, or did you like, is it a good program for that kind of thing, like self-improvement?
Absolutely. It's like self-development on steroids is how I can describe it. It's accelerated, you know, depending on how much you throw yourself into it. I found you know, more I put into it, the more I got out of it. And it's enormously revealing. And, you know, I spent like, you know, 1,000 years in therapy before that. And that's not to say that didn't have any value. It certainly did. But it's, you know, it's like, it's the sort of stuff, the sort of wise stuff that, you know, I wish was taught in schools, but, you know, it's not. And you find out through life's experiences and circumstances, but it really has revealed so much about myself and what was driving me and what my motives are, and what, you know, the fears that fuel these crazy behaviours in me, and what limits me. So it's an enormous, it is a self-help program, definitely, and it has, yeah, the greatest freedoms and rewards as a result of it. Not only for myself, but revealing things about other people and how to be, you know, loving and tolerant in the world, and, you know, part of join back this, you know, like into the community and into your own life, because that's what I did. I shrunk into myself and, yeah, disappeared into myself.
So for those that are like first entering Al-Anon, what would you say to them is the attitude that they need to have while they're kind of undertaking Al-Anon?
Well, we certainly don't give anyone advice of what their attitude should be, because I think anything that they bring into Al-Anon is very valid, and they'll probably be very angry, despairing, and in a hopeless place. So I think it's really valid, because the stuff that's happened to them, it's happened. It's terrible. The trauma that they go through is terrible. So I don't want to invalidate anybody's feelings. But I certainly would point out the things that I learned early doors was that I'm not responsible for it. I didn't cause it, and I can't cure it. So those sorts of things, I was just like, oh, really? And then, you know, it would invite more conversation, like, what do you mean I can't cure it? So I get to learn more about the disease itself and the effect that it has on me. So, yeah, we don't try and, you know, change anybody's attitude or get them to share if they don't want to share. It's entirely, you know, you can just come along and listen along and see if there's something that you've heard that works for you. And usually there's those light bulb moments as soon as you're sitting in the rooms that you go, oh my gosh, I never thought about it that way. So, well, you know, if anything, just keep an open mind and keep coming back. If there's something here that, you know, you vaguely thought was interesting to you or might help you, yeah, come back with an open mind, because it's usually just a different perspective that you might need to see or be open to a blind spot. But yeah, we try and steer away from any kind of advice and pushing anyone to do anything. It's a journey of your own, you know.
From your experiences, how do you effectively help someone, like someone that's close to you that is an alcoholic?
I thought it was to go and help them, do the stuff for them. Look, you just come along to this and you go along to this therapist and come along to couples counselling and yep. And you know what? I don't think you should have that many drinks. The one thing that changed around instantly as soon as I came to Al-Anon, I was like, don't concentrate on them anymore. Although it's so obvious to go and look at them and try and change them, have a look at what's going on for you. So you start to dig around and look at what you're doing in those situations and what it is that's driving you in those circumstances. And you start to work on you. And when you discover those things in you and start working on those and they start to get changed, you don't react and you don't focus on the alcoholic as much as you used to. It's amazing that it's just truly, it's hard to describe. It's an experience that you have once you start doing the program. And it's only really, you've got to experience it to know it, but you certainly don't. The thing that I would say that's helped me the most is I don't focus on the alcoholic. I do my program. I do the work on me and what's bothering me, and that is the best help for all people involved. Not only the alcoholic, family members, my work life gets better. My, friends, community, all that kind of aspect improves, incredibly from doing focus on myself, not focusing on them, because that's part of the stuff that I can't change. One of the most important things for me was, realizing that, my life had become unmanageable and admitting that because I was trying to keep up a front. So as soon as you sort of have that, that moment of acceptance or surrender, things start to change from that point on.
Well, it was great talking with you today, Evie.
Thank you for having me.
My guest today was Evie, someone who has experienced relationships with people affected by alcohol use disorder. Thank you for listening. I'm Jack Hodgins, and all of us at Wellbeing wish you well.